In the remote edge of a national park, a seasoned ranger is sent to investigate signs of illegal hunting. What he finds instead leaves him frozen, a grizzly bear cub, alive but tied to a tree with rope and wire, as if left to die. But what the ranger does next isn't in the manual, and the path it sets him on will test everything he believes about justice, mercy, and what it means to truly protect the wild. This isn't just a rescue story, it's a wake-up call and a miracle you'll never forget. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. We bring real emotional wildlife stories like this straight from the wilderness to your screen. The call came in just after dawn, possible signs of illegal baiting along Dead Man's Pass. No visuals yet. Ranger Thomas Hale, 44, ex-military and 13 years into service, sighed as he tossed his thermos into the pack. He'd walked every inch of that region, nothing surprised him anymore. But that morning, something did. The pass was silent, no birds, no rustling, just absence. Then he saw it, a shape in the clearing near a crooked pine, small and brown, breathing. He crept closer and froze. It was a grizzly cub, tied to the tree with thick nylon rope and barbed wire. Its fur was matted with blood, one eye swollen shut. Its chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. Tom's instincts kicked in. He scanned the treeline for traps, ambushes, bait. He raised his radio but stopped. What he saw wasn't bait, it was a child, abandoned, tortured, left to die. He dropped to his knees. "It's okay, I've got you." The cub flinched weakly. Tom reached for his knife, cutting the wire first, then the rope. The cub collapsed into his arms. Then a sound, leaves moving, branches cracking. He wasn't alone. A heavy breath rolled through the trees, and then a shape, massive, low to the ground, appeared on the ridge. The mother. Her eyes locked on Tom and on the cub in his arms. Ranger Tom Hale didn't move. The cub in his arms whimpered, a soft, broken sound. And that was all it took. The mother grizzly charged. She came fast, thunder through trees, fur bristling, jaw open. Tom had seconds to think. He laid the cub down gently, slowly, then backed away, hands in the air. "I'm not your enemy," he said out loud, heart pounding. The bear didn't stop until she was between them. She stood over her cub, chest heaving, her body trembling with rage, fear, pain, maybe all three. Tom stayed still. The cub stirred weakly, nudging at her, and something changed. The mother leaned down, sniffed her cub, then turned to look at Tom. She didn't growl, didn't lunge, she just looked. Tom met her gaze, not as prey, not as predator, but as something else. "I found him like that," he said, voice low. "Tied. Hurt. Left." She stared, then gave a deep, throaty exhale, a bear's way of saying, "Stand down." And she sat. Tom stayed where he was, watching as she licked the cub's wounds, nosed him softly, and wrapped her body around him like a shield. He could have walked away, should have, but he didn't. He knelt, reached into his pack, and pulled out a gauze roll and a small satchel of antibiotic spray. He didn't speak, just placed it near the edge of the clearing. The bear watched, then let him take a step forward and another, close enough to see the damage up close. The cub's leg was torn from the wire, swollen and oozing. Infections were already setting in. Tom worked carefully, avoiding direct eye contact, speaking only in calm murmurs. Minutes passed. He cleaned the wound, wrapped the leg, and backed away. The mother didn't stop him. When he finally stood, hands empty, the cub gave the smallest sound, a low chuffing breath. It wasn't fear. It was acknowledgement. Tom turned to leave, chest heavy, steps slow. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but it felt like something sacred had passed between them. Tom returned to the site the next morning. No cub. No mother. Just the blood-stained dirt where they'd been. He crouched down, scanning the soil. Fresh prints, smaller ones, the cubs, moving north, uneven, limping. Larger prints alongside, protective. But something else caught his eye, boot tracks. Recent. Heavy. 2 sets. Not from rangers. No tread match. No forest permits on file. Poachers. Tom's pulse quickened. He followed the tracks down toward a side trail that wasn't on the map anymore. It had been closed for years, a known route used by illegal trappers and trophy hunters before the regulations tightened. Now, it was being used again. He radioed the station, static, too remote, too late. Tom reached the trailhead an hour later and spotted it, a truck tucked behind a ridge. No plates. A black tarp in the back. An open cooler filled with raw meat and something worse, bottle traps, homemade, rigged with fish hooks and sedatives. Cruel. Illegal. Then he heard voices, 2 men, close. I told you we should have left it. Mama Bear came back, probably dragged it off. No way. It's still around. We just find the cub again, we bait the mother, sell both. Tom's breath caught. He slipped behind a fallen tree, pulled out his phone. No signal. He reached slowly for the camera in his pack and began snapping silent photos, the men, the traps, the truck. Evidence enough to shut them down. Then he heard it. A chuff. Close. He turned slowly. The mother bear, not charging, just watching. Behind her, the cub limping, bandage still wrapped around its leg. And in that moment, the men turned too. Oh hell, one raised his rifle. Tom jumped up, hands out. Drop it. I'm a ranger. You're done. The man aimed at the bear. Tom stepped in front. No, you fire that shot, none of us leave this trail. A long pause, then from the bear, a low rumbling roar. The men ran. Tom didn't chase. He turned to face the bear, breathless, heart racing. She stepped forward, close enough to touch, but he didn't. He didn't have to. She knew he wasn't protecting her, they were protecting each other. Tom drove straight to the ranger station, still dusty, still shaking. The images of the poachers burned into his mind, the bear's roar still echoing in his ears. He uploaded the photos, faces, weapons, traps, the unmarked truck, clear, undeniable. He handed the memory card to Chief Owens, his direct superior. Owens was ex-military, tough, and rarely impressed. As he clicked through the images, his face hardened. You were out of jurisdiction, he said flatly. Tom blinked. I was following illegal activity. You had no backup, no radio signal, no warrant, and you didn't call it in. There wasn't time, Tom argued. They were going to kill her and the cub. Owens looked up. You endangered yourself, and worse, you stepped into a confrontation involving a grizzly sow and her cub. I de-escalated it, Tom shot back. And I got them out safe. Owens exhaled. You also released a wounded animal without reporting it to veterinary services. Tom went quiet. He had, because in that moment in the woods, protocol hadn't mattered. Only the life in front of him had. The next day, the official statement was submitted. Tom was placed on temporary suspension pending investigation. But the photos were shared with law enforcement. Within 48 hours, the truck was found abandoned. The traps matched previous cases. The faces were identified. A warrant was issued. The poachers were caught. 2 days later, still, Tom wasn't reinstated because his actions weren't by the book. That night, alone in his cabin, Tom heard something soft crunching gravel. He stepped outside and froze. Across the dirt road at the edge of the trees stood a familiar shape, the mother bear. Behind her, the cub, bandaged, healing, standing taller. Tom didn't speak. He didn't move. She looked at him, then gave the same deep exhale she had the day he freed her baby. A sound not of threat, but of recognition. Then she turned and walked back into the dark. No fear, just trust. The article dropped on a Thursday. A local reporter named Maya Luring, known for covering environmental issues, had somehow gotten hold of the photos. The story hit the front page of the regional paper under one bold headline: Suspended Ranger Rescues Tied Up Grizzly Cub, Faces Discipline Instead of Praise. By noon, it was trending online. By sunset, it was national. Tom didn't ask for it. He hadn't spoken to the press, but Maya had done the work. She'd pieced it all together: the poachers, the trail, the lack of response, the suspension, and the bear. People weren't outraged at Tom, they were outraged for him. A week later, the Department of Natural Resources released a formal statement, carefully worded, vague, bureaucratic. But it didn't matter because the photos spoke louder than the memos. One in particular went viral: Tom kneeling beside the cub, cutting away the rope. The cub's eyes swollen, Tom's face drawn but determined. The mother bear blurry in the distance, watching. Thousands shared it with captions like, "This is what real protection looks like." He saw more than just a bear: "This is the ranger I want in my woods." Petitions launched. Rangers across the country sent support. Wildlife organizations called for recognition, not punishment. But Tom stayed quiet. He still hiked the ridge near Dead Man's Pass off duty, still checked the trail where he'd found the cub. One morning, he found new tracks. 3 sets: the mother, the cub, and a third smaller, fresher set. A second cub. He smiled. Maybe he hadn't seen it that first day, or maybe she'd given birth again. Either way, life was moving forward, and so was the forest. 2 days later, the call came. "Owens, you're reinstated," he said flatly. "Full clearance, no restrictions." A pause, then softer. "You did the right thing, Hale. The rest of us were just too afraid to say it out loud." Tom didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the trees. "I wasn't trying to make noise," he said. "I was just listening." The snow came early that year. By mid-October, the high trails near Dead Man's Pass were already white. Thin frost clung to the pine needles, and the creeks ran slower, thicker. Tom hiked out anyway, back to the clearing. The same crooked tree, the same stretch of dirt where the cub had once been tied, shaking, bleeding, barely alive. Now it was just stillness, quiet, frozen ground. The pass tucked beneath a fresh dusting of snow. Tom knelt beside the base of the tree, not to mourn, but to remember. He pulled something from his coat, a small strip of knotted rope, the very piece he'd cut loose from the cub that day. He'd kept it in his pack all these months, tucked away without knowing why. Now he knew. He buried it beneath the roots, not as a grave, but as a marker. This place was no longer where something cruel had happened. It was where everything changed. Then, just as he stood to leave, he heard it, a low chuff. He turned. She was there, the mother bear, older now, heavier, but unmistakable. And beside her, not one but two cubs. One limped slightly, the same one he'd freed. The other, smaller, more playful, nuzzled at its sibling's ear. Tom didn't move, didn't speak. She stepped into the clearing, not rushing, not aggressive, just present. She stood near the tree for a moment, sniffed the air, and lowered her head toward the spot where he'd buried the rope. Then she looked up at him, and for the briefest moment, her eyes softened, recognition. Not like a pet, not like a human, but something more ancient, a memory made of survival, trust, and mercy. She exhaled a deep, low breath, then turned. Her cubs followed her into the trees, vanishing like shadows in snow. Tom stayed a while longer, watching the trail they left behind. It would vanish in hours, but the moment wouldn't. He knew now, some stories aren't meant to be told out loud. They're meant to be honored. Months passed. Winter deepened, blanketing the highlands in silence. Tourists vanished. Trails froze. Even the rivers moved quieter. But the story hadn't faded. Tom didn't talk about it much, not to the media, not at ranger briefings. He wasn't chasing attention, just purpose. But the photo, the petition, the reinstatement, they left a mark. A few months after the snow melted, the park dedicated a new section of protected habitat, the Hail Boundary. Over 2,000 acres. No trapping, no hunting, fully patrolled. A ranger-led initiative born not of policy, but of one man kneeling beside a cub, cutting a rope he wasn't supposed to touch. A small wooden sign stands there now, fixed to the trunk of a pine tree at the edge of the clearing where it all began. It reads, "Some lives are saved in silence." And beneath it, a simple bronze plaque with the silhouette of a grizzly bear and the words, "In memory of those left behind and those brave enough to stay." One spring morning, Tom walked the trail again, alone. No pack, no radio, just instinct. The clearing was quiet, but the wind carried something, movement. He didn't look up right away. He didn't need to. He felt it. She was back, older now, slower. Her cubs groaned, one larger than the other, still favoring its leg. They didn't approach. They didn't need to. They stood on the edge of the trees, watching. Tom raised a hand, not a wave, just an open palm, a gesture of peace, of memory. The bear exhaled, and then, with the grace of something unbothered by time, she turned and disappeared into the green. Back at the station, a new ranger trainee asked Tom the question everyone wanted to ask, "Do you think she remembers you?" Tom smiled. "No," he said quietly. "I think she remembers what was done and what wasn't. And maybe that's all we ever need." If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share it with someone who believes in kindness, even in the wildest places. Because sometimes, the quietest acts leave the loudest echoes.